Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. This is the Maverick Podcast. I am your host, DJ Maverick. Today, we have a very talented guest. We have a hair therapist, the one and only AJ Basquine. Welcome to the pod. How are you?
Thank you.
Super excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here.
So I started following you on TikTok, and I got to say, I love the content. Like the way that you're marketing yourself is super unique. It's super funny. It's engaging. I like it.
I appreciate it. It's all by accident.
By accident.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe before we dive in, for the 1% of the people out there that don't know who you are, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm AJ Basquine, the hairapist, licensed to heal.
Nice. I like that.
My background is I am actually a licensed therapist about 10 years, and I'm kind of at the point where you're at burnout statistically, and I had all this time when I went into private practice, and so I decided to go to hair school, which is what I want to do like right out of high school.
So you knew that in high school, but you still went the therapy route. Really?
Oh yeah. So kind of like my squirrel moment is the tangent is my mom didn't know how to do her own hair. I was like, Mom, why don't you do all this stuff? So one day, like in secret, I was about like 12, and I was just like, hey, let me take a crack at it. Like I was always in the salon with her, and I was like, I can do what they do. And like I did her hair for years. And
really,
my mom was first generation, and my dad was first generation, like college, as far as I know.
Yeah. And
she was like, no, you're going to college.
Of course.
And I was like, all right. Then I wanted to like go for like art. And she was like, you're going to get a degree in something real. And I was like, Walt Disney, come on, what do you mean real?
Yeah.
And so all the counseling and all the things like that. And still ended up going to hair school.
So during, your life as a therapist, were you just like super drained? Were you like bored to death? Like walk me through what that was like living as a therapist, knowing that that wasn't your love and that's not what you wanted to do.
So like the prequel to that is, so I'm in college, right? Undergrad, and I've just never been prepared for anything. Like I'm just like, yeah, I'm here, I'm having fun. And they're like, did you do an internship? And I'm like, do a what? And so everybody was like prepared with that. And so I went into grad school. I was just like, I don't have a job. I don't know how to look. So I went, and then they had like a counseling track, which is a funny story is I didn't know that my mom was a counselor.
Oh, really?
Like she would just be like, I'm going to work. And then she'd come home, wouldn't tell me a story, nothing.
So you didn't know this whole time that she was a counselor?
Now, mind you, I might seem like I'm really like sharp, but a lot of stuff goes over my head. And people are like, how do you do what you do? And like, I can be real dumb. Like, let's just call a thing a thing. And so like I was there at her graduation, and she graduated like with the counseling like emphasis. I had no clue. So anyways, go to grad school. They had a counseling emphasis. Again, I didn't know. I wasn't like I'm born to be a counselor.
Right.
Like I'm an instigator. I'm nosy. I'm like, oh, this is right up my alley. Like
so
I get to know people's business.
Like how did you pick it?
I just wanted to be nosy. Like I've always tried to help people, but I'm like, I get to know your deep, dark secrets. Like I get to ask. And I get paid for it. Like I get to make you like whatever, but I guess the proper answer, I want to help people. I do. Okay. But it's self-serving. Anyways, go to grad school, do all those things, and end up like doing an internship at this company that I ended up working for 4 years. Okay. And I worked inpatient. So I guess back to your question is like, what was that like? Was it boring? So I worked with 13 to 17-year-old aggressive males, and they stayed in this facility for like 90 days.
So they were like, in trouble, gangs, or what sort of stuff?
But again, I don't really know this. Like, again, I'm like, I do my internship, but like my internship wasn't like I was back there like preparing for counseling. Like I got to sit in on some stuff, but I was literally like a receptionist. And they gave me a special title. They were like, you're going to be our assistant front office coordinator. And I'm like, I answered the phone. And then I did like HR charts because my degree is HR, but it's human relations, not human resources. So they would always try and hire me for like auditing charts. And I'm like, I've never done this. I don't even know what this is. But anyways, back on track. It was like the best time of my life. Like, didn't think I'd fit in. These kids are like in gangs, doing drugs. I mean, like you cannot get in there without being aggressive. Like you have to be aggressive within like a week or two of being admitted. And like, can I tell you a crazy story?
Absolutely. That's what we're here for. We're here for the crazy stories.
So like 2 stories. One is short. So my first client ever. And again, like you really can't keep staff inpatient. And so they just threw me in there. So long story short, the kid is there for like 5 weeks, and he doesn't know he's about to be discharged. Like, he doesn't know he completed the program.
Okay.
So we have treatment team. He comes in treatment team, and he's like this little kid, like 12 years old. Like, you can be admitted 12 years, 9 months.
Wow.
He was barely making the cut.
Yeah.
Little scrawny kid. And he's like, if y'all motherfuckers don't let me out, looking like right at the doctor, if y'all motherfuckers don't let me out of here, I'm about to shoot this shit up.
What?
He's like, I'm going to call my grandma and tell her bring the heat. And I'm like,
jeez,
man, why did you just say this?
Yeah. You were about to be out.
He was literally, and so I had to tell him, and he was like, man, what the? So he starts flipping out. I don't know how it happened. It was like too late to submit like his behavior.
So
like
people witnessed what he said other than you.
This is a room full like 6 people that all determine like his fate besides like the state that's paying for it. Anyways, they couldn't get him to stay longer.
Yeah.
You know, head in the bed, that's how you get paid. But anyway, so to give you an idea of like the type of kid that would get admitted. So we never used to do same day intakes. Mm-hmm. And I had to do the intake this day. I wasn't the coordinator or whatever. So this kid comes in, he's like 16, 17, calm, tall, like 6'2". I mean, just looks like an adult.
How do they show up? Do they like officer brings them or?
Sometimes like they'll be in cuffs, chains. Okay. I mean, they'll run. Like I've had to jump fences and chase kids. Like, and then we found out you can't chase them because if they get hit by a car, like you get, I mean, I learned so much stuff there. So he comes in and he kind of like comes in first and I'm like, you can't be somebody's dad. And so his dad comes in, his like right ear, bloody, crusty, and it's like blood all down his chest.
No way.
So anyways, to the good parts. Kid doesn't say a word. The dad's like, I'm going to fucking kill him if he doesn't get out of my house, blah, 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 all this. And we were like, so what happened? So the dad was like, my son was upstairs with his girlfriend. I gave him permission, but he kept closing the door. So I said, keep the door open. They never shut the door again. Yeah. I guess the dad had like broken up with his girlfriend, which all this stuff like comes out later. But he's like, my son beat me. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Because I've heard the story a million times. So then he's like, I said, so how did you get this? He was like, man, I wanted y'all to see how fucking violent he was. I didn't even go to hospital. I probably need stitches. And I was like, you probably should have sought medical attention. It's been over 24 hours. So probably busted my eardrum, this, that, and the other. So he proceeds to say, like, he goes to his son's room. He's like, nobody in this house is getting pussy but me. But he had like just broken up with his girlfriend. Yeah. So then he like sends his son's girlfriend off and he's like, sit on the stairs. And his son is like sitting there for like however long. So he's like, Dad, can I get some water? And he's like, I'll get you some water. And for some reason, he gets him a cup of water in like a coffee mug. Okay. At some point, it escalates because his son is like talking back to him and he's like holding a bat over his head. And he was like, you keep talking like that, we're going to fight. So his dad's like waving the bat. And his dad doesn't deny this because they have to do family therapy.
And this was like first introduction. They're like giving you all this.
Yeah, and so like the details, when I tell you the detail parts, it's like over the course. Oh yeah, I'm just like, dang, this kid's gonna be here a long time. That kid never got into it with anybody. Yeah. So the truth that I gathered was that he thought his dad was gonna hit him with the bat. So he smashed the coffee cup on the side of his head. And that was like, that's it, you're out of here. And then it kind of came full circle. Like the kid really, I mean, I never had a client that hated me. Not to like, good job, AJ. But
I mean, that's a win, right? Because you're dealing with these people that probably don't like being told what to do, or they definitely don't want to talk about feelings.
And that's the thing too. On the surface, it's that, but it was just like what I like about therapy, especially working with the younger population, is it's so hard. But like, no matter how difficult that child was, they were always lacking connection, and they usually wanted it to be with their parent or somebody that was important to them, and so. When they live with you, you become like this surrogate parent. And so...
Wait, rewind that back. So they're living with you?
100%. Yeah, I get to go home. They stay until they're released. Like we've had somebody there that was there like 6 months. Really? And that's like abnormal. Okay. Like, so one day the dad like just comes in for family therapy. And he's like, I still haven't forgiven you for what you did to me. And I'm like, here we go again. Are we really going to talk about the story one more time? And he was like, you're about to be 18 and just know that you were going to fight. So I just look at him. I said, what do you mean you're going to fight? Oh, no. He was like, he's going to get a fair one. So I look at his son because his son is like about to start arguing with him. I said, go ahead and go back to the unit. Look, I ain't tough. I might look like a linebacker or whatever. I don't know what happened that day. And mind you, the whole undercurrent of my career at this place, I've always had a supervisor that wanted to fight me. Or fire me, not fight me.
Oh, I was about to say, you gotta watch your back from the supervisor.
I mean, maybe they
too.
did. They knew I couldn't hit them back. I always had like female supervisors, but that's just, there's too many stories to tell. Anyways, back on track. So I said, go back to the unit and I'm gonna handle this. Mm-hmm. And I said, I really don't care if you're his dad or not. I was like, because he's under my care, which means I have to make sure that there's no abuse or inappropriate behavior occurring. He was like, I can do whatever I want, my son. I was like, well, you are right. When he's 18, you can't do anything. I said, but while he's here, you're not going to lay a finger on him. You're not going to threaten to lay a finger on him. And I said, and I suspect you're still using drugs because he was a heavy meth user. And he would he would smell like alcohol and things like that. I had to make reports on him. And he was like, what the fuck did you just say? And I said, today's the day I'm willing to lose my job because you're not going to tell any kid, let alone your own, that you're going to fight them.
Yeah. Meanwhile, were you like super nervous if this guy's going to flip on me? Or were you
if it was possible for me to pee on myself, like, I probably would have done it. And then like my supervisor's listening to this whole conversation. I'm like, here's her ammo. I just threatened a parent.
Oh, man.
And for some reason, I'm like, angels. Like they were watching me today. And she was like, I'm really proud of you.
Like, you stood your ground, right?
Yeah, but he like never came back. He only showed up to pick him up. And kid turned 18. And, you know, the kids over the years were like, hey, thank you so much, blah, blah, blah.
That's cool.
Whatever. And he kind of reached out and he was like, I'm doing good. And I was like, that's good to hear. But
so when you were in these therapy sessions, was it just you and the patient? Nobody else?
So they were required to do a one-on-one with me. And then I would run a group. So we had like 3 units and it'd be like 20 kids. So many fights broke out. Like one kid found an arrowhead and he put it in a marker. And like literally we had cameras everywhere. Everything had to be monitored except the bathroom and then the office. We see this video and he's my client. One of the craziest clients I ever had, 13, smart. I learned a lot from him. It's crazy to think that you would learn so much from kids.
Sure.
And not just like current events. But anyways, we see him and he like rushes up to his staff and he's like holding this marker.
Yeah.
And he had made a shank and he had coerced 2 other clients to take this one kid, which everyone hated him. I'm like, you can't kill people. And so they were going to shank him in the bathroom and he turned over his weapon. And I was like, dude.
That is crazy.
He was like, y'all won't do anything about it. I was like, we cannot do anything about him talking. We can't, he can say whatever he wants to. Right. And so, but.
So when you're in the room and just you and the patient, was there ever like a crazy moment where they want to try to attack you or like, you know, physical?
Okay,
like,
so there's been a couple times, I guess you could say it was attack, but like I was laughing. So the same patient, is funny that I told this story. I would always work late. That was just like the requirements of the job. And so I happened to be there late and they had a riot. So the course of we probably had like 5 riots. And I mean, I sound crazy, but they were like fun. Like when I say riot, like you can't even see like the floor from the cameras above because that was like all the kids like running there. They were trampling staff.
Everything gets locked down or what happens? Walk me through a riot. What happens?
So a riot, like everything is locked, but like our doors were like pressure sensitive. So if there was like a fire or whatever, and none of the kids knew, it's like if you leaned on the door long enough, they would have to give, but you had to lean on it for like 2 minutes.
Okay.
But they would just like, I mean, they would just bust through the doors. Like these are like magnetic locks and they would just be mad one day and just like kick through them. And so,
did you have like any weapons or anything?
No,
you could use to defend
we could
yourself,
restrain them like physically. We couldn't like put them in a straight jacket or anything like that.
Okay.
We just had to do like a 2-man restraint. Under certain circumstances, you could do a 1-man restraint where you could take them to the ground. Okay. But you had to call for help. We would like yell literally like code. There wasn't like a signal.
So you didn't have a radio? Like,
no.
Man, I'm not feeling good about this.
And that was the thing too. Like the kids, if they took the time to think about it, they could have overpowered like the whole strength in numbers or like, let's fight in the bathroom because there's no camera. So I'm like, you could have got away with a lot. There were some that were smart enough, but we would like get them out or like transfer them.
Okay.
So that night there's a riot, right? And so it's my client and he'd always have like these fits and I like, hey, take 5 minutes or whatever. So tonight was not the night.
Yeah.
He like broke exit signs. I mean, he was like breaking lights and trying to make like shanks and all this thing. So I take him to the front. Of course, I take him to the one room that does not have a phone. And I'm like, he's good with me. He's never like, in the midst of his rage, he has never tried to attack me. Tonight he tries to attack me. He was like, he always wanted to kill somebody. Let me kill this motherfucker, blah, blah, blah. You're such a pussy ass bitch. Why want, like, you know you want him dead too? And I'm like laughing, like, I'm just like nervous, whatever. Mm-hmm. Next thing I know, like, I'm a dramatic person, but like when I tell you, like, working in mental health, like, people have like mental health eyes. Like his eyes went black. He had the bluest eyes ever. Really? And it was just like, they were just like, his pupils were so big. Mm-hmm. And he was like standing in the corner like this. And then he just like turns to me and he sees like the doors cracked open. And then like a staff had literally just came up. Yeah. And they were like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. We were sitting there and he had like pushed the table to the side. And I was like, oh, okay, here it goes. No. He doesn't do anything. He stands in the corner and then he decides to attack me. Now, fun fact is that I'm a black belt in karate, but like really? I got this in like when I was 17, and then I like kind of kept practicing off and on. So I was like 21.
You got some skills to be a black belt.
So like I was able to dodge because I mean he's just like haymaker, windmill, whatever. So I like block it. Well, this makes him more mad. Mm-hmm. So then he tries to kick me in my balls, no. But I like catch it with my knees, and he's like, just let me go. He could have like ran out, whatever. Yeah. And so he chokes me. And when I say like chokes me, like he was choking me, but I could still breathe. Like he couldn't choke me like for real, but like the blood was, and I didn't know what to do. Cause I mean, they teach you all these things and like, I just let him push me against the wall cause I'm hysterically laughing. And he's like, what are you laughing for? Blah, blah, blah. So the same staff comes by and he's like worn out. Cause like, mind you, there's like fighting, like they're throwing bookshelves, like desks, chairs, bingo balls, like puzzles, whatever.
Crazy.
So he can only see like me and he doesn't realize I'm being choked. And he's like, you okay? And I'm like, yeah.
Why would you say yes?
And then he was like, why are you looking like this? So he pushes open the door and he's like, oh, what the? So he like breaks the hold and the kid like literally bites like the inside of his like hand till it like bleeds. Oh, and he was like, why would you say you're good and you're not good? And I was like, I don't know. Like I wasn't about to die. But yeah, the next day he got transferred out because he was literally like disrupting. Like we had a census of like 55 kids. Wow. So
that's crazy.
Like, he was like the ringleader and one of the youngest kids we ever had. It was just crazy.
Yeah. I'm still not seeing how you would say that this was like one of the funnest jobs and one of the best.
It was entertaining. Like
it was entertaining.
The paperwork was the worst part. Like dealing with the politics of like your coworkers. But I'm like seeing like the payoff of these kids like getting better, and it was just really sad because they go back to the same environment. Okay. And they had to like act the same way because that was survival. Yeah. Like not to be like, oh, they had to, but it was just like, that's how they had to function. So it's like you put them in a new setting and you teach them all these skills. Well, yeah, it's going to work. Yeah. But when they go home to like the same parent that's like cussing them out or, you know, why are you so bad? Mm-hmm. They don't get rewards like we've implemented and the parents aren't taking our advice because they're like, it's my kid. Yeah. So it was fun. I mean,
what would you say if you had to sum it up? Like, what did you learn the most of being there? Like, what was the most, you know, the best takeaway, I guess, from being there?
Okay, so I kind of want to answer this maybe in like 3 parts. With the kids only do what you allow them to do. Like, there's exceptions, but it was just kind of like kids are the best indicators of who is real and who is fake. And so it was like, I think that's why I kind of thrived in that environment because I was always trying to connect with them. Like they didn't care about a method or mode. Like they wanted to know if like you were going to try and they put you to the test. And so it was like, one of the takeaways is like, you kind of have to rise to the occasion. Like if you can't deliver, you shouldn't be doing it. And so that kind of bleeds into my next one, which was, you know, I feel like I was kind of caught in between like this generation of like loyalty, like you stay loyal to a job and it pays off. And then it's like this kind of new mentality of just like, if you don't like it, quit.
Yeah, do what you love.
Yeah, right? Do what you love. But it, you know, sometimes that gets taken to the extreme where it's like people don't know what their pursuit is. So there's like, I don't like it, I'm gonna quit. And then they just kind of like, oh, you talked to me crazy. You didn't give me a free bean burrito. Like I'm gone. Yeah. And so what I learned with this lady kind of was like a kind of a mentor. And I said, how do you know when to quit a job? Because it was just weighing heavy on me. And she said, have you done what you wanted to do at this job? And I said, yeah, I kind of have capped out because I had become like the clinical director and it took me further away from the work that I wanted to do. And she said, okay, have you gained all the skills you can from this job? I said, absolutely. And she said, that's how you know you need to go. She was like, when you feel like you've professionally and personally capped out, then then you need to leave. So that was like my biggest like takeaway from that. And I was never afraid to quit a job. Kind of after that. But also just kind of like learning to play the game in a professional setting, because I was always trying to like go head to head. Like somebody would come at me and it's like matching energy. And it's like, why would I want to match the energy of somebody I hate? Like that means I want to be hated too, you know? And so I was just like, oh, you know, whatever.
So what did you find works the best? Like when someone's that like aggravated, like, do you match the energy? Is that the best? Or do you like be calm? Like, I don't know what's the best approach there, you know?
That's a hard one, because for me, it's like situational, but you have to remember to think. Like that's probably the big, like, always remember, like, what is the goal here? Like, what is your goal? And then what is like the overarching, like, do you want to calm this person down? Have you been waiting for them to escalate on you? Like, are you waiting for them to give you a reason and like justify like your retaliation? You know, like, how do you want to be smart about this? Like, what do you want to do? So it's like, figure out what you want to do and then execute it like really good. That sounds kind of, you can take that out of context. And it's just like, but that was kind of just,
So you did that for a while. You said, hey, I've learned everything. I've grown as much as I'm going to grow here. And then what did you decide after that? Like, what was the next step? You decided to quit, or what did you do?
So I quit, and then it was just like this weird cycle. Like every 8 months, I had like changed a job.
Really?
So I went to OU Medical in Edmond, and I work on the Alzheimer and dementia unit. And I hate to say it because I love her and she'll probably never hear this, but and she doesn't work there anymore. But I was punking my boss. Like I went into this like I don't care phase. And so it was an acute unit. So that's like the highest level you can kind of get working in like the psychiatric field. And, you know, inpatient. And so the clients didn't stay. They stayed like max 14 days. So they were averaging like 6-7 days. And I hated the work. I couldn't make a connection with them. And when you deal with like Alzheimer's and dementia, so 55 plus, all their requirements are like optional. Like they don't have to come to group. They don't have to talk to you. Like with the kids, you have to make them do it. Like there's just no choice. So you have to get creative. Like, okay, I have to like talk to you while you're about to go to bed. It's here's our therapy. It's like, you have to get that requirement in to get paid. But you know, half the time they didn't remember that they were there or whatever. So I'd like run groups, and I really got good at group therapy, but like they wouldn't want to like pop a wheelie and they'd be like, I just want my applesauce, like literally. So I worked there, but how I got to punking my bosses, so it was the easiest job I had in my life. Like I got paid more. I essentially like did less, but I was driving from Norman to Edmond, and that commute is terrible. Like 55 minutes for me.
All the traffic, I-35 or whatever.
And I started, and I was like, look, they needed a therapist. I knew they had been looking for a while, and I was like, give me a bonus. Like the traffic, like gas, come on. And I was like, you think gas prices were bad back then? I'm like, fast forward to today. So anyways, I do all that. And so then I realized like she wasn't like present. Like she was always in meetings or whatever. So I would like do my work. And then it started off, I was like, hey, the traffic's really bad, like going south. Can I like leave at like 4? And she's like, okay, yeah, cool. Like, go ahead and leave. Like, get your work done. I was like, of course. Yeah. I mean, it always was. And then it started turning like 3:30. And then I like hated being there. So like at 2:30, there was like a Walmart like right next to it. And I just like go and like shop and stuff like this. So one day she like calls me. And this is what she shouldn't have done.
She's like, where are you?
Literally, because she'd like come and talk to like my office mate, because they were like two peas in a pod. They had been through everything together. And so she's like, where are you? And I'm like, oh, I'm at Walmart. Like, I just wanted to get a snack, like, blah. She's like, oh, okay. She was like, well, where are you going to leave? And I was like, no, like, I still have like an hour. And she goes, well, you can like go home. Like, you always get your stuff done. So I'm like, so 2:30, I can go home.
Man.
Dude, like weeks. Like, I went home. And then I was just like, I hate it here. So then another opportunity for me to work with kids. And so they were like, you can be the director, sounds good, yada, yada.
So you never got in trouble for leaving early?
Never once got in trouble.
Pushing it forward.
Well, and then what made me mad is they hired this lady who had so many credentials, and she was supposed to open like this like partial outpatient. So like the clients could leave, but then they had to like complete like this program from like 9 to 12. Well, the lady wasn't showing up. Like she knew I had to start group at 9. And then I would do all this paperwork. And then I was like auditing her charts. And I said, well, why don't I run this program? Which I didn't want to. And I was just like, I'm done. And then somebody contacted me that I used to work with. And they were like, hey, we have this great program. You can work with teenagers again.
Cool.
And so when I say they had charges, like some of our kids had charges. These kids were like violent offenders. Like they had a probation officer. And I was just like, what?
And you're like, sign me up.
I was crazy back then. I mean, you know, mid-20s.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can do anything, like whatever. So a couple stories from that. They were like I thought the place I worked at was crazy because it was like locked down. Like, no, they had like cells, like not bar cells, but like they had to be like locked in individual rooms. They couldn't even like share rooms at this point, but we were always understaffed. Like one time somebody didn't show up for a shift and they made me work a night shift. And then I had to be up the next day.
Man.
They had me getting up in the middle of the night because like we had females on the unit, which we had worked with females before, but like they were so unprepared. Like they didn't even have like sanitary napkins for them. So I was like up at like 11 p.m. Going to Walmart, like buying. And I'm like,
jeez. Yeah.
Like asking people like, do I get like the wings extra absorbent? And they're like, well, what? And I'm like, I don't know this girl. So couple rides there. But one of the crazier ones is I had to respond to everything that happened. Like we had no like trade off or rotation. And the guy was like, I'm the owner. Like if you think I'm going to work, I'm not. I'm literally about to go. At the time, like my current boyfriend and like his family, we're going to the movies. Yeah. As soon as we sit down, they're like, we have an issue. And
so you're on call 24/7?
All the time.
Yeah. Jeez.
Mind you, there's this other guy. He's like over like a different program in the same building. The first day I meet him, it's not like, hey, AJ, how you doing? So glad you're here, blah, blah, blah. He said, why do you get the big office?
What?
This guy is my age, like probably older than me.
Yeah.
And he like tried to pick on me every single day. And every day I had to try not to flip out. And he knew he'd get on his skin and he would turn his back and he would laugh because he knew I was mad. Man. But anyways, he would say stuff like, get your unit under control. Just picking at me. Yeah. I'll tell you probably not on the podcast funny things about him. But he like wouldn't help me at all. Like he would actually like borrow staff from me, and his unit was small. And I'm like, why are you doing this? But there was a lot of crossover anyways. So there's a riot going on, and there was 2 problem children. Somehow they locked themselves in a closet that should have never been open. One of the staff who I actually grew up with got manipulated, took them to the kitchen to get a snack.
No way.
And it was like this whole big plan. So they locked themselves in a closet and they have sex.
Oh, man.
Not only that, they get caught, and then the boy is like, I don't want to get in trouble. So he finds batteries and swallows them because he knows we have to take him to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
So it's just like stuff like that over and over and over again. It gets crazy to the point where I was like, I was like the only person that was licensed. Like other licensed like therapists, they were like contracts, so they were in and out. And I said, this all falls on me. Like they were telling me to like break rules. Like, okay, when something bad goes on with the kid, we have to notify their probation officer within 24 hours. And he's like, let us handle it. Like, we can get this under control. I'm like, okay, you're breaking protocol.
Yeah, definitely.
And then so I was like, I'm going to lose my job.
Is it because it looks bad on them? Like, do they get a thing for that?
Because so I didn't realize that we had like this like multi-$1,000 contract. And so basically we were kind of like on this contingency that if we could prove that we could manage the kids,
I see,
we would keep our contract. But we were on like this like 3-month probation or something. I didn't know the details, but so he was always trying to like keep it a secret. This is what I was told. This might not be accurate, like 100%, but I was like, I'm gonna like, I went to all this school. I went to 6 years of school.
Right.
Been practicing for probably at this point like 5 years. Like, man, I gotta go. And then I got thrown under the bus because, you know, I had a couple of friends that worked there and they were like, hey, you want to know what he's saying about you? He's like, he basically like the contract was under review, or, you know, he's talking to like these big people. And he was like, the reason why everything was going bad because it was AJ. He just didn't know what he was doing. And I was like, I was the one teaching y'all about the protocols, like, and these systems that you have to have in place, you know, which is why I'm thankful for my first job. It was just,
So we were talking off camera that you sort of became the hair therapist because during the therapist work that you were doing, you couldn't really be yourself, right? So is that because you have to kind of like be like, you know, I guess not an influence one way or the other, like you couldn't really like
so you have to try and be like neutral. You can't be too personal or whatever, which it's interesting because I feel like, and there are some people that Do I have the best boundaries? No. Am I going to do something that's going to get me in trouble? No. But I found that the more authentic or genuine I was, or like kind of, you know, you can do like self-disclosure if it's therapeutically beneficial.
Okay.
But to just be like, oh, hey, you know, like shoot the shit. And, you know, it's like, oh, yeah, I had a cheeseburger, whatever. It's like, that was the wall I would sit, is like, I wanted to like engage one and be like, yeah, duh. Yeah. And you just like kind of couldn't, especially with kids, because they'll just like twist and, oh, he said blah, blah. Oh, no. And so it's kind of just like an ethical kind of like line, but it's a little bit of a gray area. But it was just kind of like, I like to try and be funny and I like to tell jokes. And it was literally, I just had like sit there and like, okay, what modality am I going to use today? Like cognitive behavioral therapy or Rogerian or, you know, behavior modification and all this stuff. And so it was just like getting harder and harder. And I was like, I'm not cut out for like admin work. Like, cause it was just like, I feel like everybody that kind of works in like a corporate type job, it's like all these people make decisions, but they're not actually deployed in the field. And so it's like, it doesn't work. And so I was like, I always caught this thing where everybody's like, oh, we should do this. And I'm like, well, I've worked the floor and I've worked this and that. It doesn't work. So why are we suggesting that? Like, well, let's just try it. Yeah. And it always kind of went full circle. And it's like, okay, well, we should just do that. And I'm like, you could have saved yourself thousands of dollars, but okay.
Yeah. So ultimately, is that kind of why you decided to leave, or like, what was like that jump? Because I think probably that first initial jump to say, I'm going to leave therapy to go do this brand new thing. I've never probably, well, you said you've done it in the past, but you know, not probably as at a professional level, right? So.
Yeah. So the transition. So when I was in college, like I was like learning how to like expanding like my hair skills. Like YouTube was blowing up and like people were sharing all this knowledge. And so I had a friend, she was getting her weaves done by another friend of hers, but she moved back to Texas and she was like, do you know how to braid? It's like, yeah. She's like, you know how to cornrow? I was like, yeah. She's like, you can do my weave. Worst weave. Like, I mean, there are, but I was like, I didn't know what I was doing. And whatever. And I said, hey, give me a chance to do it again. So like the small circle of people like let me do their extensions in college, and I was making money. So I kind of never like got away from it. Still doing my mom's hair.
So it was like a side hustle type
Yeah, it was like a side hustle. And I'm like, I was doing $25 weaves and I'm like, people are charging $250 for it and whatever. And so had like the small clientele. It wasn't anything big. I wasn't like hustling. But I was like, hey, I want, you know, a Baconator from Wendy's. Like, let me go ahead and do this head.
Cool.
And so I kind of like never left it. So that last job I just told you about, I had a friend that I had worked my first professional job with, the inpatient one. And she was like, AJ, you keep begging like for more money and this and that. And she's like, I've been in private practice. You basically like can't cap out, like unless there are just not enough hours in the day. And so she breaks down all the money and this and that.
Yeah.
And I was also like contracting. So I was going into home schools and daycares with another like independent agency.
Okay.
Which also I witnessed, like, that's a whole nother story. But like basically this lady thought that her kids were kidnapped by her ex-husband.
Oh, wow.
Cause like he didn't see them for like months and months. And so, you know, if you ever watch like these murder shows or kidnap shows, they always say like never go to the second location.
Yeah.
So she was like, jump in the car with me. We're about to go to his house, blah. And I was like, no, I'll drive my car. And so her son wanted to ride with me. And I'm like, no, like that. And she's like, it's 5 minutes of the road. Like, will you please do it? Anyways, this whole fight breaks out. Her ex-sister-in-law was like, I've been waiting for this. I don't fucking like you anyway, dude. And so it's like this one, it almost looks like a one-lane road.
You're in the car? Or
she asked me to get out the car. She's like banging on the door. She starts lying about my credentials. She was like, he's a DHS agent, certified, blah, blah. Yeah, she was like, bring me my kids. What are you going to do, kidnapping? I was like, I'm getting back in the car.
Man.
They weren't even home. They pull up. They run out. And so the ex-sister-in-law, like, is in my car window. She was like, this fucking crackhead. Is this what you want to do? Are you doing meth with her? And then it turns out that they were reporting that I was a drug dealer, and I came because I had to come out like twice a week. And they're like, she's in the yard acting crazy, this and that. I was going to be subpoenaed to court. The big thing to that is I almost had to go to court. I hope, fingers crossed, this was years ago, that I'm not breaking anything. But so her boyfriend takes off in the car because like we're all like blocked in, because if I could have left, I would have.
Yeah.
So the boyfriend leaves the mom and he runs through and he almost hits my car. So he's like making a full circle and we're in this trailer park. And so the ex-sister-in-law has like this huge boyfriend. He's like standing, you know how you like open the car door and you can like prop in between like your car and the door. He was like that. And he like tried to hit the door. And like all I see is like a hubcap like fly off. Like I don't really know what's happening. And basically like I was just like, was that like an attempted murder? Like whatever.
What did I just witness?
And he like pulls off and he like leaves her. She's like, what are you doing, dude?
Yeah.
And they like drive off. Like he comes back and gets her. So he's made like 2 loops at this point. He picks her up and they just like leave me with the kid. They don't text me. They don't tell me anything. I'm like, and sweet kid, he's like 6, 7. And he's like, where are my parents? And I'm like, man. I was like, don't worry, we'll find them out. And I'm like, what the? Like dialing. They won't answer the phone. Cops are there. I can see like 3 cops coming in the neighborhood. And so I was like, before I take him like to DHS or the police station, because I'm like calling my supervisor. I'm like, what's going on? So I drive home and they're sitting on the porch, like legs crossed and like smoking cigarettes. And they're like, took you long enough. I said, you didn't tell me where you went. I thought I was going to like take him home with me or something. So he gets out the car and it was just like this whole thing. And I just was like, I'm done with this stuff. As soon as I opened private practice, made the same amount of money and I literally worked like half the hours because it was like private pay. So it was like people with good insurance. And, you know, I was like, man, like I'm getting like double the pay for like, you know, one client. Yeah. And so I was like, let me look into going to hair school. And it somehow just like worked out. I blocked off my schedule and I was a hit at hair school. I, you know, had like, you know, on top of the skills I had to like learn color and like real cutting techniques and things like that. And it was just like, it was good. And I was like always booked up and like the owner would like make fun and they were like, you know, you're really a problem child for us. And I was like, what did I do? Like, I'm deathly afraid of getting in trouble. It's funny because I act like I don't care and I'm like shaking inside. And she goes, you don't have enough slots for me to book all the people that request you. So just like hair school was just a bunch of fun. Yeah. I didn't really have any problems there. I had a misunderstanding with 2 people. And
so when you were there, were you like, this is what I should have been doing all along? Like, this is, you know, my love. This is what I like doing.
Yeah. I mean, it tapped into the artistic side of me. And it was just like, you know, in therapy, when people essentially like get better, they leave you. So you always see people kind of at their worst trying to get better. Sure. And then you can't have contact with them. You can't keep up. You can't reach out. You know what I mean? There are some loopholes like continuation of care. And it's like, hey, I'm just doing like a mental health checkup. But it was always just kind of like impersonal. It's like, I don't get to say or ask what I want to ask. Right. And so I hated that part of it. But it was like with hair, you know, somebody likes it or hates it. Or, you know, whatever. And you can kind of go back and forth. But it was like, you just always kind of had to like take the beating or just like absorb other people's like sins or like, you know, traumas. And it was like, I cried like the first 6 months of like working because you just didn't think kids went through so much stuff. And, you know, we had expanded at my first job to like 9 to 11-year-olds. Yeah. And they were the most violent, but shockingly, they actually had the highest lethal suicide attempts. Oh, wow. So most of them would like try and attempt to kill themselves with a gun. And a lot of their parents were like, we don't have violence in the home. Like, we don't know what was happening. And just like some of the abuse that they would report, because, you know, you kind of have to talk about it, just how you could tell that they didn't grasp what had happened to them. Yeah. They would tell you like some of the most horrific stories, but it would be like, I had goldfish. Man. And I'm like, what did you just say? And they're like, yeah, such and such happening with so and so. And I'm like, but they're just like playing cards. And I was like, I can't. Like, because you just, you have to like, that's tough. You have to regulate yourself because you really like, I feel like if you're a decent person or somebody with a good moral compass, you want to go out there and hurt the people that's hurt, like these innocent kids that you should be like playing and, you know, like teaching them like 1, 2, 3s and, you know, manners and look both ways to cross the street. But just like,
that's tough.
It's really tough.
Did you have trouble like sleeping and unplugging? Like after hearing all those stories, I bet that's tough too. Right?
Yeah, I mean, naturally, like I'm always sleepy. So I'm like, I have no issue going to sleep anywhere. But it was just unplugged. Like, I mean, it was just stories would replay over in my head. And I'm like, how? I don't get it. Like, how is this kid like not, like you should be more angry, you know? Just like, that was crazy. But anyways, go to hair school. And it was like instant gratification. It was like people left happy and they got to text you, which sometimes that's overwhelming because they're want to go on
forward to spending time
and then
with
they're
you,
like,
you
know, and it's like my background is you can't hang out with a client, and it's like, hey, come to my birthday party, dude. And I'm like, oh no, I can't do it. And I'm like, wait, no, I can. And then it's like just this weird crossover. They're like, oh, you really are a therapist. Well, can you do my hair? And then like I'd be here, and I'm like, no, we can't. Like you pick one or the other. And I was like, you kind of inadvertently picked me to be your hairstylist. So I was like, but you get like good advice for free. And and sometimes what I like about it too is like I can draw on that background, but I can like cut it down to like 5 minutes. It's like in therapy, you kind of have to let people get to that point and get them that tool. But it's like if I'm like behind the chair, I'm just kind of like, here's what you need to do.
Really?
Blah, 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 blah. And they're like, oh,
yeah.
But again, too, it's like if you kind of want that advice to stick, you have to like journey with your therapy client. And so, you know, it's one thing to kind of experience something versus like be told. It's almost like your parent. It's like, oh, you'll regret that later. And it's like, no, I won't. And then you go off and do it versus like, someone's like, okay, yeah, see for yourself.
Yeah. So speaking about parents, how did you break it down to them to say, hey, I'm going to leave therapy. I'm going to do hair. Like, this is what I love to do. You keep asking
me all these good questions. And it's like, so my tragic background. Are you ready? No, I'm just kidding. So my parents got divorced when I was 7. And then I never really had that much contact with my dad until like recent years. So I stayed with my mom, and we just had this big falling out. It was the summer probably of like 2017. I kind of got kicked out of church, which that was a whole crazy thing. I'm like, everybody knew I was gay, right? It was just like one of those things you didn't talk about.
Yeah.
And it was just like, whatever. So some mutual friends.
Like literally kicked out of church? They told you don't come back type thing?
They didn't like that I phrased it like that, but they gave me an ultimatum. So the pastor's kids was friends with another guy that we would go to the club. So I don't drink. So I just went out to the club and I danced. And that's at the time, that's how I like met my boyfriend I stayed with like for 4 years. So the pastor's wife was the music minister. So for weeks, she had been watching her son's Snapchat stories of the guy that I was hanging out with. So then one day she calls me, and I knew what the call was. I don't know how I knew. And she was like, hey, I was hoping that this wasn't true, but after like 4 weeks of seeing you like at the clubs all weekend, like you basically like, we don't promote this lifestyle.
But I mean, you were dancing. Like, what were they?
Well, that's what I said, what's wrong with what I'm doing? Because I was with the same church for like 24 years. Like since I was like, 23, it doesn't matter. But since I was like 6 or 7 up until I was like 27. So I knew all their business. Like, their dad Ponzi schemes or pyramid schemes, and like perfect, arrested. Right? I mean, tramp stamps, you know, all the things they say you shouldn't get. I was like, I know what you're doing. So anyways, we don't promote that lifestyle. And I was like, well, I'm not, you know, you didn't catch me like kissing somebody.
I'm not drinking.
I wasn't drunk, whatever. Like, but I knew that they drank. I knew that like people in their family were doing drugs or whatever. So it kind of like came full circle, if you will. But anyways, so she said, you know, I'm gonna give you some time to think about it. Like, you can't keep doing that if you want to sing and like serve in the church. And I have been wanting to quit this church for a long time anyway. And so I said, you know what? I'm not going to change. Like, I want to live the life that I want to live. I've kind of waited till I'm like 26, 27 to get to this point. And I just felt like things were on hold. And so she was like, no, I'm going to give you time to think. I said, but I know that the answer is not going to change. Right. So then she was like, okay, I'll call you in a week. Like, just kept pushing it. And so she was like, do you want me to pray with you? And I said, if you don't think I tried to pray this away on my own for years and years, you're not going to do any different. And I said, I've already talked to my mom about this. It's not, you know, it wasn't a bad thing between us, but it was just like, I said, if you think your prayers are stronger than my mother's, you're crazy. Like, but I mean, her son was like driving drunk and, you know, all these things. I'm like, what? Sin is sin. You know, like, do you read the good book? Like, whatever. So she calls me back and I said, well, I actually had to call her because it was like a week went by. And I said, hey, I won't be back. Like, I'm not going to change what I'm doing. So then it turns out that like she was sleeping with one of her best friends in the church's son. Who was like, I mean, he was of age as far as I know. And then like her husband was going to rehab. Apparently the rumors were he was a pastor. He was being drug out of bars. He was on, you know, all, you know, speed, whatever drug it was. I don't know the details, but I mean,
The never ending, let's fix the roof fund or something.
It was just like, and it was just like, I mean, they lived a lavish life. I mean, they had a daycare, they had a gym they were renting on top of like the tithe, and then they got bonuses. They got to, you know, they got a birthday stipend, and they got like a car stipend, a house stipend. And I'm like,
man,
really? Yeah. But then like they had to give their church away, you know, and so that's.
So
crazy.
You still didn't answer my question of what you told your mom. When
so
like,
so back to that summer I got kind of like kicked out of the church, but me and my mom like kind of were like separating at that point, you know, just like growing apart. And then we had this big falling out in December. So I had just bought a house, and she was real particular. She was like, you shouldn't have like give out keys to people. So she had all my spare keys. My brother was playing football at OU, and they had just left, and I locked myself out the house. So I had to like, quote unquote, break into her house, but she had like this jank door she never fixed, and she put like canned goods in front of it. So I basically like pushed the door open, and we get into this whole text argument. Of course, I've always been in my mind a good son. Like I never caused her any problems, and so I like started talking back to her because she was like, "Shut up, talking to me," blah. And I was like, "I never have to talk to you again." So luckily, like I was at this point in my life where I like didn't have like a connection with my parents to have to explain what I was doing. And so I was just like, man, my life is like really my own. So the long version, the long answers, I didn't have to tell them.
You didn't have to worry about
I did.
that.
And I was just like doing what I wanted to do.
Cool.
So that was like fun.
What about you personally? Did you ever doubt like, hey, you know, you said you were doing private. It was like more money, less work. And now all of a sudden you're going to go into this new industry. Like, were you worried about the money or anything?
100%. Because so while I was going to hair school, COVID hit. And so like I'm about to graduate, and then COVID hits, and it's like, it puts me behind like 3 months. 2-ish, 3-ish months. And the first thing to shut down was what? Barbershops and hair.
You're like, and so I'm close with everybody, right? Like there's no getting around it. Right?
Yeah. And I'm just like, so how am I supposed to make money if this is the first thing to like go down? And so I still do it like part-time, but I cut back on my hours like significant, because there's just clients that you want to work with, and you can kind of pick them out and all those things. But I just recently went full-time, and it's great. You know, I make the money that I want to make. I meet characters. I get to be myself, you know, through social media. So yeah, I mean, I'm scared shitless every day, because I'm like, could you look back and it's, you know, I spent 6 years doing school and, you know, paying $40,000-$50,000, and you know, why did you do all of that to whatever? But it's like, do what you love and the money comes. And I was like, I had to practice what I preach. It was like, was I happy? Yes, but it was just like, but it almost felt like at my expense. Like it was just like I had to give up so much to find this sort of fulfillment for others. I was like, I'm tired of being happy for other people. Like I want to be happy too.
Yeah. So you felt like you did the school, that whole route, to try to prove to people that you could do it? Or did you think?
I think it was just like, I was trying to make like my mom proud. Like, I mean, like I'm grateful for my education and things like that, but it was just like, I just felt like I was realizing like I didn't truly do anything for myself. Like it was just like, I did what I was supposed to do. I was like, I got a car, I got a house. I have a stable professional job and something I could like, which I mean, like, if you like what you do, you should definitely be proud of it. But it was just kind of like, I can walk into and be like, I am a licensed blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, now, you know, I don't think any of that matters, because I'm like, I'm happy.
Yeah.
So cool. Just like crazy.
So when you wake up now in the mornings, do you look forward to like going to work and doing what you do versus back in the day?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm just like, oh, this mother, like, this is who I got today. Like, but it's always like good laughs. I mean, like, I literally cry laughing like every time I'm kind of at the hair salon.
That's
like,
awesome.
It's just like, I love being around people. Like I say, I hate people, but I really don't. I just hate what the world can be sometimes. And I'm like, well, then you got to put more out in there to like make it a better place. So. Yeah, you know, I get all like.
I always joke that even like now, naturally with guys, especially like your barber sometimes ends up being your therapist. They know all your secrets. You probably share stuff with them that you don't with like family and your closest friends. No, it's like, crazy, right?
Like there's this dude, I mean, straight as straight can be, and like he loves me to death. And I will tell him some of the craziest, like, and he'll just sit there and laugh at me. He's like, I don't know what half the stuff you just said is, but, and I'm like, do you want to know? And I'm like, dude, but I mean, like, it's just stuff like that. It's like, I still get to connect with people, and it's shocking how much people are more open than we think are close, because we live in this world where it's just like everybody, it's sometimes it's just or whatever. I'm not the judge, but it's like just we're so ready to be offended, I think, you know, and so it's just interesting to see that I can operate in this space where there really isn't much to be offended. I'm like, we just get down dirty and filthy, and then I'm like, and you walk out looking better than you can.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I feel like even on Instagram, we show it's our highlight reel. Like it's our best moments, right? We're living this amazing life. Look at my new car. Look at my vacation. Look at this awesome thing I'm eating. But we're not really saying like, you know, what's really happening, all the struggles and everything, right? But for whatever reason, when you go to your barber or whatever, you tell them the real deal. Like, hey, look, like, you know, I'm being cheated on. Oh, look, I'm facing bankruptcy, or I just lost my job. Like, I don't know how that happens, but it just like
it just
organically happens.
Like,
right?
I mean, I literally could just stand there and they're just like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, cool, for sure. Like, but and like you kind of said, to that point of, you see social media and people are just kind of like, you see, especially in like the beauty industry, there's so much like glitz and glam and, you know, Cartier bracelets and this and that. And, you know, and you can make money like that. I mean, the beauty industry is truly full of hustlers. And I mean, it kind of is polarized. It's like you either kind of are like this run of the mill, and then there's a few people kind of in the middle. And then it's like, you just kind of like put in the work and you take off. And so I'm so grateful for the salon owner that I work for. I call her boss lady. Her name is Tracy.
Shout out.
Tracy does life, you know, because I'm really grateful for her, because I never thought that I would be here. And like, I kind of met her through one of my friends in hair school, and I was supposed to meet her through a class or whatever, and it didn't work. And so it was time for me to stop basically doing hair out of my house, which you're not supposed to do, but whatever.
They will keep it on the down low.
As I like tell like all the viewers, listeners. And so I like meet her one day, and it's like, you know how you just like connect with somebody? And she was like, have you interviewed her? I said, no, I want to be here. And like, in my opinion, we're two peas in a pod, like we're thick as thieves or whatever. But like, we're just tight, and like, we just do all these things, and, you know, photo shoots and traveling and education. And just like, she really has supported me in like chasing stuff, and she's really transparent, and she has her own like extension company. I mean, any question I would ask her, she's gonna answer. She hides nothing, and she's just raw. And so it's like, that helped me to feel more comfortable with being like my authentic self. But it's a lot of work. Like, you think like nobody hear me out. Nobody gives a fuck at all about a good hair picture if you are not doing reels or something visual, something with motion. They don't care. Like, I could post like some of my best work, and if it is a still picture,
it's like scroll, right?
3 likes. I sit up there and do something. I'm like, oh, I'm bored. I need to like make a video. Slap on a wig. 5,000 views. And I'm like, what?
But I will say, like, the way that you market yourself, it almost seems like you don't take yourself too serious, right? You don't care what people think. Like, I'm going to do this thing, and it comes off as authentic. Like, it's you, and you don't care, right? But sometimes in the beauty industry, you see the opposite, where like everything has to be perfect. It's like luxury, it's glam. And that's what you see. And I think what you're doing is like polar opposite of that.
And I think you do. And it's been a journey. I don't want to say it's been hard, but everything has a struggle. It's sometimes hard to be comfortable with yourself, because who doesn't want to be well received by somebody? And so when you're not when you're kind of preached to, especially with, you know, doing therapy, that you have to kind of only give people the bare minimum of who you really are. And it's like, now I'm in front of camera, because like, another funny story I'll tell you later. Well, after this, but I am being genuine. But there's only been like twice where I'm like, man, should I post that? Like, whatever. And those
have
been
second
like my
guess, like if you want to put
I've had something in draft for like weeks. And so it was so funny. Like, I did like this reel, and I just thought it was like stupid, and I felt like it only makes sense to me, and it was like my highest reel. Like, I was like so proud of it.
Is it the one that's like, you can do you, but I'm gonna do me, and you're like hopping on top of a car and stuff?
Okay, you would think it would be something like that, but it was literally like, these girls keep using a Revlon brush, and I hate it. And I mean, like, it's literally just a sound, and it sounds like potato chip bags like crinkling, and I'm like, 91K. I mean, like, I wake up and I'm like, why is this like a thing? But no, the ones I think should know. I mean, they don't. The ones you like put your blood, sweat, and tears in. I feel like the harder you try, and I mean, it does work for some people, but I wanted to make sure that I was doing something that I could maintain. So I was like, I'm going to be me and like post when I want to. Like I had a social media manager and it was like a friend and she was like, hey, be my tech. And she was like, get on a schedule, get on it. And I was like following to a T and it was just like work. It was like, I'm not having fun. So I just post what I want to, whatever. And like, it's just work. Yeah, it's like snowballing. And I'm like, I never thought that this would happen. And, you know, you do kind of like these collabs with people and those can be a hassle, but it's like, collaborate with people that you actually want to collab with. And if you can't, like wait till they're ready. Cause I'm like, I've done some things. I'm like, whatever. Like, cool, get my name out there. But you know, people.
So tell me the story about the guy that had to give you a call to see if you had a chemistry with this girl or not. Walk me through that. Because to me, that's just crazy. Like the fact that you would have to go through all that, just, you know, you're just like there on a professional level working with this girl. How does that even happen?
Okay, so my first 3 weeks working at the salon, Lotus in June, this girl comes in and the owner, Tracy, she's like, hey, I can't get her in. You know, she basically runs me through all the things. This girl has involved hair. She has like one of the priciest weaves you could think of. She wants me to dye her hair black, all this stuff. So then she basically is like, oh, I love the way you did my hair. She tells her boyfriend at the time, and I think the key word that triggered him was like, I love AJ. He has he was like, I thought you get your hair done by a girl. And she was like, no, like she couldn't get me in, yada, yada, yada. So I'm getting like these phone calls from this construction company. You know how like you have like caller ID and it tries to like tell you who it is.
Yeah.
I don't think anything of it. So I get a weird phone call, and like backstory, she's a dancer.
Okay.
And so makes really good meaning. She's gorgeous. So her first appointment, I'm noticing like some weird stuff in her. And she's like, oh, I had tape-ins, blah, blah. I ripped them out. And I'm like, this don't look like you ripped them out. It looks like somebody cut your hair, whatever. This comes into play later. It's not funny. You know, but anyways, it comes out that he was like putting hands on her, like they fight or whatever. But I was just like, I ain't the sharpest, but I know that this isn't what you're telling me. So during her appointment, she shows me this video, and because she was like talking about getting all this like plastic surgery. I mean, she's drop dead gorgeous. And she was like, oh, thank you for saying that. I have a black eye. And I said, where'd you get the black eye? She goes, oh, let me show you the video. So her man is sitting on top of her in front of a driveway between cars, and her legs are like pinned. And this like refrigerator built bitch kicks her in the head.
Oh, geez.
And I'm like, who is filming this or whatever? And it turns out like it's the guy's son who's been in love with her since she's been around. And I was just like, you need to leave him. She's like, oh, I'm done with him, dude. And he's like calling her throughout the whole appointment. He's like, baby, where are you, dude? And you know, he's talking so loud I can hear him.
Yeah.
So anyways, he's like calling me because he doesn't believe like we're not messing around. Because he was like, who the fuck takes 4 hours to get your hair done?
Oh, no.
I don't know. I made this worse because I'm like, hey, do you want me to like tell him like all the things that we're doing?
Yeah.
She was like, don't even worry about it, dude.
Do you think he looked you up on social media? And
I have no clue because she was telling. So she calls me at like 12:30 at night. And I'm like, this is really weird. And so my dumb ass, I'm like, I shouldn't call her back, so I don't call her back. But I'm like, what if her weave fell out while she's like spinning on the pole? Like my mind's going like 90 miles a minute.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll call her in the morning. So in the morning, Tracy calls me. She's like, AJ, are you okay? And I'm like, what? Skip forward. He keeps calling me. Like the salon, like Tracy and her boyfriend are like defending me, and they're like, because he's like, I got goons, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, if you don't think we know people, like, you're not going to do anything to AJ. And I don't know any of this is going on until like it's almost over. So speed it up. He is like cheating on her. So we're watching like her stories, and he's like got all these like mistresses. Girl gets beat up again. Then it turns out they get married. So me and Trace like, what is going on?
Yeah.
So I have to tell you that because I'm at O Bar in Oklahoma City, and I get a call from her. We haven't heard from her. Like, she's been banned from the salon, all these things. She's like, please take me back. Like, I don't like how anybody else does my hair. Like, please, like, Tracy, will you at least like find a spot for me? And she's like, I don't know if we can have that here. Like, you threaten AJ's life.
Yeah,
and so she's like, now if you're done with him, we can work something out. So she's like, do you want to take her back? And I'm like, sure, I'll like second chance. Like, I'm in the business of like rehab, like whatever. So I get this weird call, and it's like, hey, AJ. Hey, AJ. And I'm like, hey, how are you? And she's like, I'm good. I just want to say I'm sorry for my boyfriend. And I'm like, oh, you mean your husband? I saw that you got married. Like, how beautiful. Like, are you happy? Are you safe? Like, you don't owe me an apology. Yada, yada, yada. And she's like, and I can hear like, he's like telling her like to say stuff. So I'm like catching wind of this. So I'm like really nice. And I'm like, I hope you enjoy like being a newlywed, like, like no hard feelings, yada, yada, yada.
So you think he like forced her to call you on speakerphone to see like what kind of chemistry?
I'm glad you said that. So we end up like agreeing to do her hair again. Mm-hmm. She swears up and down she's done with him. So she's like, yeah, I married that son of a bitch, blah, blah, blah. And he was calling me a whore at the aisle, told me don't touch him. And I said, what? She had to pay for her own wedding. This is her first marriage. Yeah. He doesn't give a crap. So as she's telling me she's done with him, he's calling her and she answers the phone. He's like, where are you, dude? It's like 9:31. She's like, I'm buying makeup. Mm-hmm. There's nothing open besides like Walmart at 9 a.m. to buy, like, you ain't buying CoverGirl. Like, she's pretty. So I was like, so anyways, that whole thing comes. And I said, hey, I just have to ask you a question. And I was like, that phone call you gave me, she was like, it was a setup. She was like, you passed with flying colors. He was like, if you want me to believe that you and AJ don't have anything, like, you'll call him. And he was like, I'm a cheater. Like, he didn't say like this, but he's like, basically, I've been with enough people to tell when somebody has chemistry. Like, that's crazy. I used to lie and say my barber was only a barber and I was sleeping with her, this, that, and the other. This is a very condensed story, but it was just like really bad. And she said like, you know, we would get into it and all this stuff. Needless to say,
it's crazy.
You might have to have me back because
I think we're already getting the signal here that we'd our mark.
Yes.
Well, we got so much to talk about.
The end of it is I've agreed to do her hair again and she has still not left him.
You're crazy. I don't know how you're doing that. You're crazy.
Yeah.
We'll definitely have to have you back.
I would love a part 2 and I'll be on time.
Yeah. No problems. I guess to wrap it up, I always say, you know, I put the guests on the spot. Tell me something about yourself that most people don't know about you. I don't know. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay, so I'll give you anything. 2. So I actually really hate my speaking voice. And so to get better at like speaking or whatever, which I mean, it still doesn't change. Like, I still don't like hearing myself talk. I used to practice the intro to the Power Rangers movie. And it was like this huge, like,
well, you're going to have to give it to us now for sure.
Centuries ago, an interdimensional being known as Zordon came to the city of Angel Grove to establish a command center for his never-ending struggle against evil. But like, it's like Star Wars. And so also to add on to that, I would memorize hair commercials. So I like memorize like all these Pantene. Like, I could tell them on the spot. So
that's cool.
I used to practice speaking by
like
memorizing commercials and movies. So
cool. All right. So for the people out there that are not crazy and they want to follow you and see everything that you're doing on TikTok, on Instagram, where can they find you?
It's Hair by Basque, BASQ.
Okay.
And TikTok is the same thing.
Same thing.
So yeah.
Awesome. I think you're definitely worth a follow. Like I said, you're super authentic. You know, you got great content. So definitely keep it up.
I appreciate it.
And we'll definitely love to have you back.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The super talented AJ Basquine on the Maverick podcast. Keep grinding because in the dream we trust.